Lightsabers are one of my favorite sounds, and in fact it was the very first sound I made for the whole series. The projectionist, and we had a projection booth with some very, very old simplex projectors in them. When they just sat there and idled, made a wonderful humming sound, and it would slowly change in pitch, and it was kind of that inspiration. That sound was the inspiration for the lightsaber, and I went and recorded that sound. What was missing was kind of a buzzy, sparkling sound. And that I found one day by accident. I was carrying a microphone across the room between recording. I was recording something over here, and I walked over here with the microphone, passed by a television set, which was on the floor, which was on at the time, without the sound turned up, but the microphone passed right behind the picture tube, and as it did, this particular microphone produced an unusual hum. It picked up transmission from the television set. And that was a great buzz, actually. So I took that buzz, recorded it, and combined it with the projector motor sound. And that, the 50-50 kind of combination of those two sounds became the basic lightsaber tone. To achieve this additional sense of movement, I played the sound over a speaker in a room, and then took another microphone and waved it around in the air next to that speaker so that it would come close to the speaker and go away. You could whip it by. And what happens when you do that by recording with a moving microphone is you get a Doppler shift, you get a pitch shift in the sound, and therefore you can produce a very authentic facsimile of a moving sound, and therefore it gave the lightsaber a sense of movement, and it worked well on screen at that point.
The original Godzilla roar from 1954 is probably the most famous sound effect in film history. Redesigning it comes with a lot of responsibility.
If you're going to create the Godzilla roar, you have to use the original template as your jumping off point. It's one of the most iconic sounds. You can go anywhere in the world and play it, people know what it is.
The original roar was created by a leather glove and a double bass, right?
We reproduced that experiment, but we wanted to continue exploring.
Now we have the opportunity with all this technology to kind of recreate it like no one's ever heard it before.
With Dolby Atmos, it creates a whole new level of resolution. Comparing it to picture, it's like a postage stamp to IMAX on an audio level.
We just spent a lot of time sitting there, going back and forth.
Everything from rusty door hinges, drum toms, and rubbing them to create kind of squeaks.
It wasn't like a eureka moment, it was just like we kept doing a million passes at it. And finally we're like, okay, that's it, that's great, that's good.
Had the Rolling Stones tour rig, 100,000 watts of power. Tour groups could hear us, and they were calling Burbank police, like, what's going on? We presented it to Thomas on the big stage.
I went over, sat down in front of the board almost like we are now, and it was perfect, at least for my ears.
Godzilla in Atmos is going to be quite an experience. It's not just the walls and the rear wall, it's the ceiling. It's basically a hemisphere wrapped all around the audience. And because of that, we can create a much more immersive environment. What you hear is every bit as important as what you see.
The Banshees were one of the major sound design tasks in the film. The Banshees are the giant pterodactyls that the Na'vi fly around their world on. It wasn't until I really saw these creatures that I realized how complicated they had to be. In this case, one of the components that proved to be incredibly useful was some 2- and 3-day-old baby swine that had made sounds that you could swear you'd never be able to tell what animal they were coming from. And when I pitched them down a bit, put some echo on them, they took on a very bird-like element, as well as some guttural type of breathing and whatnot from horses and from various different reptiles. That sort of became my palette. If you said, well, what was the key component to the sound of the Banshees? I can't honestly tell you. because for me that's not the way I work. Once I sort of pull these sounds from various different creatures, I almost forget where they come from on purpose because I don't really want to be thinking about it. On my synclavier, I build a patch of many, many different elements, and I start to play with how they fold in and out of each other.